Hello. So, Transport for London have given the Overground lines the names they announced they were going to back in February, I think it was. I talked about this back then, I even got interviewed about it a couple of times. But a few people have been asking about it recently, so here's a quick video for the benefit of those who weren't here in February. Just talking about it, now that it's a thing that actually exists. I am a little bit behind on the news here because basically this fell around the same time as I had some sponsored videos due, and those things have to be scheduled in advance. But that's okay, the Overground naming was also delayed, largely due to that massive hack that wrecked things up for TfL. So let's just say that we're both to blame for this. However, this weekend I was out filming and got to experience some of the changes for myself, not as a theoretical thing, but on the ground as a user. Now, my opinions in general have not changed much since February. I do still think it's a good idea because the Overground is a series of different lines serving different parts of London. It's so large and so disparate that it makes sense to split it up a bit. Before, if there were delays on the Overground, you'd have to look up whether it was your particular part of the Overground that had a problem, or an unrelated line. Now, you can see at a glance, there are delays on the Liberty line, but that's no problem for me. I am on the Mildmay line. Sucks to be on the Liberty line, though. If anything, I think it should be more split up. The particular line I needed to travel on was the Weaver line, which for most of its length is 2 lines. One to Enfield Town and Cheshunt, the other to Chingford. They only share 3 stations: Liverpool Street, Bethnal Green and Hackney Downs. In fact, on the maps actually on the Weaver line at the stations, they do that DLR thing and have the different routes in different shades. Basically, I think they should have just outright split this into 2 lines. Highbury and Islington, I think, illustrates the usefulness of the new system. It's a complicated interchange. You have the Victoria line, the Mildmay line, the Windrush line, and the Weird one. The 2 sets of Overground platforms are right next to each other. Now, at a glance, you can see which one is the Mildmay and which one is the Windrush. In a busy station, anything that reduces the amount of people stopping to check they're in the right place, or cutting across the flow of people to check a map, is a good thing. Now, one of the arguments I've heard against is, well, couldn't people just figure out which platform they needed before? And yes, they could, but this speeds up the process. Clear and simple wayfinding has always been a key part of the smooth operation of the network. It's why the map is diagrammatic. It's why the tube lines have colours. It's why the Johnston font is universally used. It's why the station name is in the middle of a big circle. Yes, we could just not do any of those things and mutter skill issue when a tourist accidentally ends up at Emerson Park. But I am of the opinion that these changes are so simple in relative terms that the reasons for making them outweigh the reasons against. The amount it cost was something in the region of a single day's revenue from TfL, that is £6.3 million. And the amount of disruption putting it in place was minimal at worst. I've also heard people argue, why do this when National Rail doesn't feel the need to name its lines? Aren't those also confusing? Well, maybe they could do that. But that's another question, really. You'd have to take it to them. I take the view that other people aren't doing it is not that strong an argument. The actual names that were chosen caused a certain amount of discussion at the time, but having used some of the lines, having actually had to use the names, the choice of names is irrelevant, really. You don't think about it when you're looking for your train. You're not thinking, but the Mildmay Hospital is not on this line, as you travel on the Mildmay line. I also heard a few people saying, well, I'm just not going to use the new names. And I'm not clear how that's supposed to work. Like, are they going to stare at the signs for, as it might be, the suffragette line and loudly declare, well, I don't know what this means. I am looking for unnamed Overground line. It just seems a bit strange to me. So anyway, those are my brief thoughts on the named Overground lines as they stand. As I say, my opinions have not changed much. We're currently in a bit of a transitional phase. Most of the changes have been made, but there are still a few stragglers. You may notice that this screenshot taken on Sunday still says Overground. So clearly the TFL Go app hadn't been fully updated at that point. We'll see how things go in the long run. For me, I remain optimistic. Well, I do hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon and here on YouTube for your support. You are the clear sign to my confused passenger. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.